Hello and welcome to the second of 4 educational mini-series brought to you by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. My name is Ann Barlet and I'm the Manager of Community Outreach and Education for the agency. The second series that we have scheduled for everyone is focusing on helping to prepare baby boomers for caring for their elderly parents and various aspects. We will include things on a separate series on legal and financial issues to be concerned about, housing issues, as well as health issues, and then some additional program services, resources, and transportation services that are available. Today's segment is on our housing issues, and I use that term broadly because we have a variety of options. So once you're looking, trying to care for an elderly parent, what are some of the things you can be looking at and planning ahead for? And I want to introduce our guest today. To my left is Mary Clark, and she is the founder and co-owner of Transition Connections. Next to Mary is Dennis Scalese, and he is the intake supervisor for the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. And then at the end of the table is Manetta Maniaci, and she is our staff ombudsman at the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. So thanks and welcome everyone. I'm going to start right in today. And Mary, we were talking in the past, and one of the ways that we met is because I think you were in the boat that we're talking about as a baby boomer and having to figure out what do I do, where do I go, how do I start? So can you just share with the folks, maybe they'll understand a little bit about where you were coming from in this subject matter.
Well, thank you, Ann. Yes, we were in a situation where my father was ill and my mother was still living in the house we grew up in, 2-story home, 4 bedrooms, and she just couldn't remain there with the steps and her health and his health. So we were trying to figure out what to do, where do they need to move. And I have 5 brothers and sisters, and we were inept. We did not know what to do. We didn't know how much money we needed. We didn't know what was available. So we did a lot of things wrong, and we did a few things right, and we did get things straightened out. But that, as you said, was part of the inspiration for getting this business started, because there is a real need for help and advice on what to do in these situations.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that little bit of a personal story with us, Mary. So I wanted to start right in as to, okay, so I've heard and I've been at different aging parent fairs and community fairs, and I've talked to a lot of folks, and they've said to me they have all kinds of things. We've got relatives that are in a different state and they want to move home. Do they move home with the child? Do they move into a place here? Do they move into a senior living environment or a long-term care location? Do they move into a small apartment? What services then, depending on that, what are available? So I wanted to start off with talking with Dennis about, should that be the case where we're caring for a parent and they need some sort of services, and they typically call our agency. So Dennis, can you share with us, let's start with some in-home services and how to access those in-home services.
Well, first let me clarify. I know when people want to bring their parents home, they don't always count the cost, so to speak. They're not always trying to figure out, okay, what can I reasonably do for my mom and dad? And a lot of times, if they don't think that out, they bring them in and realize, you know, I can't care for them as well as I thought I could because I'm working full-time, my husband's working full-time, and I have children. But there is help out there. Number one, it depends, the services that we offer are to help a person stay in their home as long as, you know, safely possible. We offer several services through the state. 3 of the main services. Now there's others on there, but these are 3 of the main services. And these are based not only on a person's need, what kind of help do they need? Bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting, transferring, walking, meal prep, eating. Some of those are called activities of daily living. This is something you have to do every day. There's the independent activity of daily living, which is grocery shopping, transportation, laundry. A lot of times the family's kicking in already and helping there. But it's the others, the ADL, which most of our programs are primarily based in, that people need help with. like getting their mom up in the morning, getting a bath, getting them a breakfast because they have to go off to work. The 3 basic programs: Aging Waiver Program, Options Program, and the third one is called the Family Caregiver Support Program. The first 2 I mentioned are primarily based on the consumer's needs. The third one is based on the caregiver's needs. They're based on level of care, meaning how their medical status is affecting their ability to care for themselves and how compromised they are, as well as income and asset. It could be just your mother's or the person that needs the cares, income and assets. Sometimes it's household. I can get more. You want to be specific or just generalized?
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned, let's go over specifically with the aging waiver.
Okay.
You mentioned that it's an income asset type of thing and their need. What do they need help with?
Okay.
So tell us real briefly, because we have more, we'll talk about that more detail in a different show, but talk about our agency. We'll go out and assess, and once they're enrolled, and real briefly on the enrollment, but then let's go into what kinds of services would be available to somebody if they were in their own home.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the focus on those services.
But if they're in their own home.
Yep.
If they're in their own home, again, it's the services that I mentioned. The way to get those services, very simply, you give us a call. You give us a call, and at our front desk, there's someone who's going to answer the call, and you're gonna say, I don't know how to transfer the call. They're going to ask you, good morning, this is Berks County Area Agency on Aging. How can I transfer your call? And you'll say, I don't know. But once you just start saying, I need some help from my mom, dad to stay in their homes, they get you right to the intake person. We're going to ask specific questions. We're going to ask, we have what we call a triage sheet. We go with the name, address, demographics. We asked you, what kind of help do they need? Do they need help bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting? Do they need help with their grocery shopping? How about their medication management? We'll ask all those questions. It sounds like we're doing an assessment on the phone, which we are. Briefly, we are doing an assessment because we want to make sure that when we send out an assessor, we're sending them out on an assessment that would possibly end up in services. So we kind of give you a heads up that, yeah, this looks like this person's going to be eligible. Once we get all our information, we get it to the assessment unit. It is assigned to an assessor, and they're going to give you a call. And one thing they're going to do, they're going to work with you as far as time available to be able to go out and assess. The assessments take about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We ask that there be a contact person. Sometimes it's the consumer or the person that's needing the services themselves. But sometimes it's family members. And if family members want to be there, we encourage it. We will work with both the family member's schedule and the person that's wanting the services schedule. Once we get that scheduled, we go out there, we do the assessment. Once that's completed, at that time, we're only assessing for the level of care. We're not going to tell you, oh, well, you'll be eligible for this service, this service. We can give you an idea what you'd be eligible for, but then there's a second assessment that has to be done. Once we get our work done, once we get it reviewed back at the agency, we send it out, depending on depending on the program, we send it out to Berks visiting nurses, and they'll come out. They actually do what's called a care management instrument, which is changing soon to be a, what do they call it? It's a NAT.
A NAT?
A NAT. It's assessment
Needs assessment tool.
Needs assessment. Gosh, we haven't used it. They haven't okayed that yet. That escapes me. But the CMI is a care management instrument. What that does is a basic, it's almost like the questions we asked you before, but we get more in depth about what the informal supports. Once we get through all that, then they target the program. So that's basically how it's done.
So really, to condense that, to not be confusing, obviously the person's called in, identified the fact that we really believe the person that we're calling for, whether it be a parent, an aunt, an uncle, that they need help with. We're looking at either those activities of daily living or those other indirect kind of things such as housekeeping and so on. An assessment is completed by our agency, and should they qualify, and the qualifiers you alluded to in the beginning was the income eligibility and the needs to have the need for those particular services. That's all been done, let's say. The process has moved forward. You mentioned that the agency does not give the approval. They do that piece. Once the approval's been given by the appropriate state department, just share what services then, let's say that somebody will stay with aging waiver if they're approved, what could they possibly get through that waiver program?
They can get help with, as I said, bathing, dressing, grooming, meal preparation. They can do light housekeeping, depending on the care plan that they set up.
Okay.
The need, they do a kind of a needs assessment, as I said before, and then they base a care plan on that needs assessment. And it also depends on the informal support and what is viable time options for the consumer. But they can get all the help, as I said, for bathing, dressing, grooming. They can get help even in certain programs with medication management, but that depends on, I want to clarify something, because a lot of people call us and say they need help with medication management, because that's the one thing that they have trouble with. There's not one service that just helps with that. The aging waiver will provide some help with that, but the reality is that our home health aides, that's who we call on, that's who come out to the house, cannot give medication. They certainly can remind, but they cannot give medication. And in certain instances, the aging waiver can provide some help with the giving of medication, but it really does depend on the care plan. So those are the kind of things that can be received through those programs. But I want to also, let's say you realize that you're, the parent that you want help for, they have pretty good income, and their assets are fairly high, and you figured, you know what, I wonder how else we can get help. You can call directly.
Well, hold on. We'll cover that. I just want to explain. We were still on the waiver.
Okay.
And I want to take another quick minute to, there are some other services that are part of that, right?
Yeah.
Can I not get personal emergency response systems where that might be something that might be, again, based on need for that individual. Maybe that's not a need, but it's a service that's available through waiver.
Right, and it is, but I think it's the same. They have to live alone and not have, if they're living with somebody, the PERS, I don't think would be picked up by aging waiver. Okay. But when they live by themselves, yes. Okay. They can
so
be
again,
picked.
Each is individual who qualifies, and the services are appropriate through a care plan.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned the other program, which was options. Can you give us the difference in a brief
options program?
sentence or two?
Well, I will say this, a very brief.
Waiver?
Aging waiver, you have to be what's considered nursing facility clinically eligible. Doesn't mean you're in a nursing home. It just means that your need are at the place where if you weren't having help at home, you'd be in a nursing home. Good. Options program, you still have to have those ADL needs, bathing, dressing, grooming, transferring, one or more of those. And we provide the same help, but not as much. It may be 3 hours every other day or three times a week. The maximum amount of help you can get with the options program is $741 a month. If you average it out at $20 an hour, that's 9 hours a week. Just a good basic, amount. You also get the same kind of needs met. The bathing, dressing, grooming, all that. It's just that it's a more condensed. It's like if you're doing 3 hours a day, and every other day, that's pretty good. And they'll cover the same things aging waiver does, but maybe not as many hours. Okay? It's also the eligibility is based on income alone. Income alone, not assets.
Okay. And again, so those are two key programs through the Area Agency on Aging where folks may be able to qualify for in-home services. And when we say in-home, that means in their home, whether their home be living by themselves in their own home or whether they be living with a relative, another family member. And the other option then, Dennis, that you were getting into, and just mention this real quickly, is, so my mother may not qualify for these things because of either income, assets, not a complete need for some of those things. there is still another resource available, right? Can you tell us about that?
We offer a list of home health agencies that pretty inclusive list of home health agencies that we can send you, we can email you, fax you, or mail you, depending on your technology. When you get that, you can actually, we always say, you shop it. You go look at, see, what your needs are. You begin to call the agencies, see who can, first of all, can provide those needs, who can do them in a timely manner, and the price. And you're the one that's going to be in the driver's seat. You're the one that's going to hire that, and then they will work out a payment arrangement with you. So that's another way to do that. A lot of people think they have to go through us to get that. No. They can go right to a home health agency and do that.
And there are some that will provide medical needs that the folks have, and others that will just provide some of those ancillary services like housekeeping or companion, right?
You will see on the list, we have a non-medical and medical list. The medical lists are usually the aging, waiving certified people that have to have a nurse, not all of them, but some of them, they have to have a nurse, and they can help with the more medical needs. The non-medical is strictly, like you said, a home health aide.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. So we're going to move along now. So one of the options is obviously for the individual who needs some services to stay in their own home or live with somebody, receive services that are brought in home, in most cases, or otherwise would be in a skilled nursing facility. However, there are folks that, for some reason, that's not doable, that won't meet their needs. And so some other options are the long-term care living options. What are some other places that folks can live? And I'm going to introduce those. In particular are going to be places like personal care homes, assisted living, and skilled nursing facilities in particular. So I'm going to ask Manetta Maniaci, our ombudsman, to go over. Please tell us the difference between each of those, if you will, and what kind of services, or why would one go to personal care versus skilled nursing?
Okay. I think the reason Ann wanted me to do this is that as an ombudsman, a Swedish word for representative, I go into all these facilities. And so I can tell you a little bit about what they're like. I try to make sure that the residents who are receiving these services don't have any concerns or problems that I can help them with, and that they know what their rights are. So let me start with one you didn't mention, which is adult daily living centers.
I was going to mention that afterward. These are movable, so let's just stay with the three that they're going to move in. Okay?
Okay. So a personal care home is a home that will take care of people who are basically mobile, and they can be independent in their own private unit, but they're going to need help with somebody coming in to their apartment or their unit to help them with bathing, dressing, perhaps. They do incontinence care now also, and they're going to get 3 meals a day that have to be served to them in the dining room. And part of the philosophy of personal care homes is that people live together, and that a community setting where people have a chance to socialize with each other and do things is very good for their health and their mental well-being. So somebody who is at home but they're just not thriving, they're lonely, they might choose to go to a personal care home, and they vary so much. Once you've seen one personal care home, that's what you've seen, one personal care home. They can be a small home of 15 to 20 people, and everyone congregates in the living room and watches TV together. Or it can be a huge conglomerate of apartments and living spaces where people come and eat in the huge dining room. There can be 300-400 people. So you can't say this is what it looks like. It's very different. And one of the real philosophies of all area agency on aging is that whoever is helping a senior tries to place them in the least restrictive setting possible. And of course, we want people to be safe, but we want them to have quality of life. And it's important for them to try to match that person's needs and their preferences, what it is that they want. So it is a matching game. And so when you're shopping for a personal care home, you really need to go see many different kinds. And we have like 31 in Berks County, so there's a lot of variety.
And let me just jump in to clarify, because I don't want to confuse folks. You had mentioned about the Area Agency on Aging and matching. That when somebody chooses to go to a personal care home, for whatever reason, the Area Agency on Aging does not place one there.
No.
This is personal decisions made by the individual, the family, to pick and choose which personal care facility they'd like to go to. And as Manetta was saying, then shop around, look at several. They are all different. You've got city, country, large, small, as you said. So you want to really, do your homework and look.
And homework can involve getting a list from the Area Agency for Aging that lists all the personal care homes and a little bit about the services. We don't give prices. You can go online and get prices. You can call people up. You can also go on the site for the Department of Public Welfare, which is now known as the Bureau of Health Services, Human Services, and they have connections to all the personal care homes and what they offer.
Okay, Manetta, could you just go quickly to tell us the difference between personal care and assisted living, and then immediately into skilled nursing?
Assisted living is a marketing category. However, in the state of Pennsylvania, it was established several years ago as a licensing category, and it's a little bit different than other states. So when you cross that state line and they talk about assisted living, they might be talking about what we call personal care homes. Assisted living in Pennsylvania is a very specific category where they can have a person live there and meet their needs even into the skilled nursing area. These are all on a private pay basis. So the cost in a personal care home might start at $1,000, but in assisted living and even some personal care homes, it can go up to $6,000 because you're paying for what services you need. But basically the services come to you in your private unit. Except for meals, which have to be eaten in the common dining room.
And then let's go to skilled. What is skilled nursing?
Skilled nursing is basically for folks that aren't very mobile or have confusion to the level where they wouldn't know how to get out of a home if there was a fire, dementia to that point. And they may need to have a oversight for a lot of different diseases or chronic problems that they have. But when you go into nursing homes today, you will see primarily people in wheelchairs, people who are bedbound. Wasn't that way 15 years ago. It pretty much is that way. But really, nursing homes are two businesses in one. One of the businesses is long-term care, keeping people comfortable, custodial care, and the other is rehab care, so that almost all skilled nursing homes have units where they are helping people get better, giving them therapy. And so people today, I've talked to people who have been in 5, 6 different nursing homes after the hospital, then going back to their own home, or they may go back to a personal care home for a while. So skilled nursing really is providing oversight. Usually it's not terribly private. There are 2 to 4 people in a room. There are nurses available, call bells. They're overseen by the Department of Public Welfare. And one of the big differences is that if you are running out of funds, you can apply for medical assistance, who will pay the difference between your income, which has to go to the nursing home, and the cost of care there.
Okay. So we're going to end it at that in terms of that. So I think I'm going to wrap up with those things. Personal care is exactly what it says. Folks need help typically with some form of personal care and unable to stay in their own home. They also include things like medication management. They're also getting their meals, etc. Assisted living, a little bit more assistance in order to stay perhaps even further in the spectrum of care need. even into skilled needs. And then you have skilled nursing facility, as Manetta mentioned, with some rehab services, or those that are staying there on long-term basis needing much needed 24-hour type of care and more assistance in that care. Well, we didn't mention, and I'm going to take the time right now, folks that are, so we have the in-home services staying in home, and we have moves to personal care, assisted living, and skilled. Another service real quickly is adult daily living, and we've had shows on specifically adult daily living in the past, but to let you know that that's a day program. So folks that are in their home, and perhaps the baby boomers need to go to work, but they're not sure mom or dad will necessarily be safe, or not sure they're going to remember to eat their lunch that they've prepared. They're at adult daily living centers. They can go during the day, various hours of the day, several days a week to 1 day a week. It doesn't matter. If it's over lunchtime, they'll get a meal, they have activities, socialization. So you can find those lists, as well as the personal care, assisted living, and skilled facilities at the Area Agency on Aging. As we wrap up, though, I want to get back to Mary and talk a little bit. Mary has some tips for us, because no matter what, if we're moving from our own larger home to a smaller home, or from our home to personal care, you've got some tips to help us make that move smooth.
I sure do, and I'll be fairly brief. I work with a lot of folks that are in the process of either moving or trying to stay safe in their home. I have 8 quick tips for you. Develop a plan. Whatever it is you decide to do, whether you're going to stay in your home or move, you need a plan. Nothing happens without a plan. Set a reasonable timetable. Just keep in mind, if this is going to take 6 months, take 6 months. Number 3, work with a buddy. This is very difficult to go through all the property and all the items in your home by yourself. Set a time period of 1 to 3 hours at a time, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, but have a reasonable amount of time, because it's it can be very emotional work. Work on small goals. Empty a closet, empty a shelf on a closet, whatever works for you, but a small goal. When you're working in basements and garages, get help. I've been in many homes where I need a mask. So most seniors are not in condition, especially with their breathing, to be in those places. So get somebody younger and get some help. Stay calm. Stay calm. It can be done. It can really be done. And when you get overwhelmed, ask for help. Never be ashamed to ask for help.
And I think I'm going to take that cue with asking for help, and remember that you can call the Berks County Area Agency on Aging and ask for help. Ask for all of those things that we talked about today. We do have some resources as well, like Transition Connections that Mary has, and some others that will help with those changes, with downsizing, with going through some things, with creating that plan for you. So you know that you are not alone, and that there is some help out there to look at that. And the plan can be everything from that immediate downsizing all the way through the other services and programs that we talked about today. I know we've covered a lot in today's session, and we will have 3 others to help the baby boomers care for elder parents, and so stay tuned for the future series, and thanks for tuning in.